Hello and welcome to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we're going to go through the two Thanksgiving games. The Texans went over the Lions as well as the football teams went over the Cowboys. Also want to touch on a bunch of injury news to get you all set up ahead of Week 12 Sunday. Hope everyone had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I did enjoy both the games. It was a shame we couldn't get Ravens Steelers on there, but I am old enough to remember back when we did only have two games, and when that post-Thanksgiving meal kind of sleepy mood came on around 8 p.m. Wasn't the worst thing in the world to be able to sit on the couch and not have to worry about some more football. Okay, who are we kidding? I would have preferred to have 3 games, but it is what it is. We're done with them. We're going to go over those 2 games and get some good injury news. So thank you as always for tuning in to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And without further ado, let's get after it. So with this Texans win, they won by 16, 41-25. And yeah, this wasn't really a deceiving final score. I thought they were able to really just to kind of have their way with this Lions defense throughout the game. They're up 23-14 at halftime. And honestly, like Jordan Akins had a pair of passes in the end zone that probably could have ended 2 drives and scores. And he just wasn't really, it was a game where Deshaun Watson, again, really was just able to do whatever he wanted for most of the game. I mean, to throw for 318 yards and 4 touchdowns with no picks on only 25 attempts was absolutely wild. It's been more of the same, though. I mean, Deshaun Watson without DeAndre Hopkins this year, rather inexplicably, has just been the best quarterback that we've seen of his career. So, Watson, obviously the Texans would be better off having DeAndre Hopkins than not having DeAndre Hopkins in the offense. But I think we have seen him be more willing to spread the ball around, get everyone involved. And because of that, go ahead and make just some constantly really good decisions. Because in this game, Will Fuller had team high 7 targets. Brandin Cooks was there at 5, and nobody else had over 5 with them. So only 25 pass attempts. We've seen Watson be willing to kind of focus more in on one guy. But in this 2020 version of the Texans offense, it's Will Fuller, Brandin Cooks, and then everybody else, particularly while Randall Cobb remains sidelined. So good stuff from all those guys. And it was Will Fuller who ended up having the biggest game of the group. 6 catches, 171 yards, pair of scores. He had the week 2 goose egg against the Ravens where he was in and out a little bit with a hamstring injury. Then he had a 5-catch, 38-yard performance against the Browns when they were more or less playing in a monsoon. Other than that, all Will Fuller has done all season is ball the hell out people. He has scored in every single one of those other games except for a 112-yard performance in week 1 and last week when he had 6 catches for 80 yards. So truly, Will Fuller, every week wide receiver 1, as we like to say at PFF, every week is Will Fuller week. Looking at the rest of these guys, Brandin Cooks, 5 catches, caught all 5 of his targets for 85 scoreless yards. Cooks, prior to this game, and it's not going to slip too much because this was a solid performance, but prior to this game, since Bill O'Brien was fired after week 4, Brandin Cooks was a PPR wide receiver 12, Will Fuller the wide receiver 17. So, after seeing Fuller go off like this, you could easily kind of jump Cooks in that pecking order. But hey, Deshaun Watson, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, makes sense that he can enable more than one fantasy relevant wide receiver. Didn't see a ton from Kiki Cootie here. Had a DFS kind of pregame show I did on the PFF handle Thursday morning, and just mentioned with Kiki. He had those big games in 2018. Just realized those were as the offense's number 2 pass game option, usually with Will Fuller out and only working behind DeAndre Hopkins. So as long as Fuller and Cooks are healthy, expect them to continue to be the top 2 guys in this passing game. Mentioned before, Jordan Akins had 2 targets, but wasn't able to come down with either one. One of them was really egregious, hit him in the hands. The other one, the linebacker, I guess, was kind of in the way. But either way, we did not see Darren Fells get a target, which was good, because if Deshaun Watson could ever just have one good, consistent tight end, I think that guy would be scoring double-digit touchdowns on a yearly basis. So Jordan Akins, someone that, hey, if we continue to see Fells just not utilized at all in the passing game, maybe Akins could end up being an more consistent upside too once the season goes on, but going to be tough to expect, too consistent of production from him as long as Darren Fells continues to split a lot of the snaps. With this Texans backfield, Duke Johnson, season everybody, kind of, he went out there, still played, the lead RB role, but we did see CJ Procise get a little bit more action than usual. So, at the end of the day, Duke was out there for 75% of the offensive snaps. That's barely off of the 77% mark we saw last week. That's legit RB1 usage, everybody, and we will take that 8 days of the week. Ended up having 9 carries, 9 carries, 37 yards. CJ Procise has 5 carries, 12 yards. So again, even if Duke didn't have just, any electric runs, we saw him, running over a linebacker on his way to getting 8 yards, picking up a couple, 3rd and short conversions, had a couple big blitz pickups throughout the game. I just don't know how you can watch Duke Johnson and, just say that this guy can't do everything a normal running back can do. I admit, me freaking out about him for the last 12 months on Twitter, even throughout March and stuff, we haven't seen those sort of blow performances to really warrant all the, kind of just entertainment and speculation I've given towards Duke Johnson. So I get it. It hasn't been anything resembling, a top 20, even a top 30 back in the NFL. Just realize with this sort of usage, he's going to continue to be squarely on that RB2 borderline. And, how about we use Duke to his talents? He's not, even I can admit that Duke Johnson is not the running back you want getting 10 to 15 carries a game right into the teeth of the defense. But what offense should be handing anyone 10 to 15 carries a game in the teeth of the defense, unless we're talking about Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook? So it was good to see the Texans get Duke more involved as a receiver. That's the best part of his game. He had 4 targets, caught 3 of them, 43 yards and a score. Also drew a defensive pass interference penalty in the end zone that set up CJ Precise for a short touchdown. So with Duke, had a nice one-handed catch. Then he had, drew the DPI. And then for the touchdown, 33-yard slug up where Jamie Collins just could not hang with him in open space. So good to see Duke Johnson, get going. This was against the Lions' league worst defense, and PPR points per game allowed him to position. So, I get it. Might not be a week 13 thing, particularly if David Johnson's able to come back from the concussion. And either way, they're going to be matched up against the Indianapolis Colts in week 13. That's going to be a much tougher matchup. With this usage, Duke is still going to be on that RB2 radar, but as opposed to this matchup where, we're facing the lowly Lions, and I was, actively recommending people get Duke Johnson in their lineup. I think next week against the Colts, going to be a little bit, more understandable if you're not able to get him in there. So great performance by the Texans. On the lines real quick. So Matthew Stafford, 28 for 42, 295 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 4 sacks. Just kind of another underwhelming game. He had a 51-yard completion to TJ Hawkinson. That was thanks to a trick play. He almost caught a touchdown himself. I'm talking about Stafford, but it ended up being ruled an incompletion. Even if he would have caught it, he would have been down at about the 1-yard line. So fun throw from Jamal Agnew on that one, but was not meant to be. Yeah, look, he should have been picked off trying to chuck one deep to Marvin Jones on 3rd and 14, but that was more or less a pump play anyway, so it wasn't an awful decision. And his touchdown was this beautiful, kind of crosser to Mohamed Sanu where he was under pressure and throwing off his back foot. I was watching Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show. I believe he goes on every Tuesday. Really good segments from those guys. But it was interesting because McAfee was giving Rodgers crap about, Patrick Mahomes introducing the no-look pass to all the quarterbacks around the league, and Rodgers, rolling his eyes, shaking his head because obviously, Brett Favre and guys have been doing that for years. We all joke around about how, if any other quarterback had made this throw, they'd be all over ESPN, but because it was Mahomes, he's the one getting all the love. But either way, with Stafford, what Rodgers said was that someone that actually doesn't get nearly enough credit that they deserve for, being able to throw at weird arm angles, make these wild completions, was number 9, Detroit, talking about Matthew Stafford. So we did see a little bit of that in this game. A couple of smart plays. He was going to take like a 9-yard sack at one point, happened to see his running back there, so he just threw it at his feet to avoid the penalty. So Stafford, someone that I thought could maybe just rally this Lions team this year to something resembling playoff contention. Obviously that hasn't been the case, 4-7, and they've just looked like a fish out of water more weeks than not without Kenny Galladay in the picture, dealing with that hip injury still. But Matthew Stafford just realized, over the past decade, if we're purely talking arm talent and some guys, that are just able to make throws that very few quarterbacks on this planet can make, Matthew Stafford firmly falls into that category. With these receivers, mentioned TJ Hawkinson getting the bulk of his 89 yards on that 51-yard kind of blown coverage play. Marvin Jones had 12 targets, caught 6 of them for 48 yards, hobbled off the field pretty badly with a knee injury on the last play of the game after he couldn't come down with it. So keep an eye on that, and he'll kind of continue to be in that, borderline wide receiver 2, probably more like a boomer bust wide receiver 3, as long as Galladay remains sidelined. Nobody else ended up having over 5 targets. Stafford was distributing it pretty well. Remember, Danny Amendola also missed this game. So when Amendola is out and Galladay is out, they really just kind of rotate Sanu, Cephas, Marvin Hall, and all these guys. And we know the running backs and tight ends are getting plenty of targets as it is. So not really a situation we can take too much advantage of other than with Marvin Jones. Quickly looking at these backfields, we saw Adrian Peterson with, LeGarrette Blount kind of vintage Turkey Day performance. He found the end zone twice. He got going in the third quarter. I think like the first 5 plays of that drive or something, they fed on the ball, and he was making some guys miss, to his credit. Ultimately, though, AP, he had 22 snaps and he had 15 carries. Like, how much more obvious can it freaking be that you're giving this guy the ball at some point? And, talking about Matthew Stafford and having all this arm talent he does, what are you doing wasting his time just handing the ball to Adrian Peterson over and over again? It's like, the days that we had from past years when he was just checking down to Theo Riddick and Golden Tate 20 times per game. That is not slander on Golden Tate. I love Golden Tate. I'm just saying, why do you have one of the league's most talented quarterbacks, just in terms of pure arm strength, doing all these things that literally anybody can do? So it is what it is. I just don't know why We're handing the ball off to Adrian Peterson, Kerryon Johnson, a combined 26 games in a game that, again, was pretty much out of reach by halftime as it was. So Kerryon ended up playing 48% of the offensive snaps, down a bit from the 70% the week before. Caught all 4 of his targets for 52 yards. I mean, they're just using him as DeAndre Swift as long as Swift remains sidelined. But, credit to Kerryon for making the most out of his opportunities. He did lose a fumble in there, so it wasn't an all great game for Kerryon. But yeah, so situation where as long as DeAndre Swift remains out, Adrian Peterson is going to be a threat to get these short touchdowns. He's going to be a threat even when Swift comes back. But Kerryon's going to be the guy, the scat back that should be getting more looks when they fall behind in games such as these. It does sound like that DeAndre Swift is going to have a good chance to come back next week. He was limited, I believe in Tuesday's practice and was questionable, more like a game time decision. So would imagine with the extra rest, with this being a Thursday game, DeAndre Swift will be back in that top 10, top 12 RB1 conversation in week 13 and beyond. Moving on to the Cowboys, 41-16 lost to the Washington football team. A couple big points here. So Zach Martin got hurt early on with a calf injury and pulled quickly. Not good. He was ruled out. And yeah, if we're taking away Zach Martin, who was the best member of this Cowboys offensive line, I mean, Tyron Smith, La'el Collins, Travis Frederick, who retired before a season. Like, obviously these guys have had great years of their career, but I think just going into 2020, there was no doubt that Zach Martin was the single best player on this unit. You take him out and it's just going to be tough to expect much of anything from anybody. Credit to Andy Dalton for hitting Amari Cooper on a deep touchdown. But other than that, we just didn't really see this Cowboys offense move the ball with much consistency throughout the game. With that said, this was not a blowout. I talked about the Texans just kind of being, in front for really most of this game. I mean, the Cowboys were only down 20-16 in the beginning of the fourth. And then they went ahead and tried this ridiculous fake punt from their own 25-yard line. Again, only down 4 points early in the fourth quarter. Didn't work. Next play, Antonio Gibson goes ahead and scores a touchdown. Cowboys can't score again. Washington gets the ball back. They march down the field again. Gibson scores. Cowboys ball back. First play, Dalton pick 6 to Montez Sweat. All of a sudden, it's 41-16, and this game is well in hand. So truly, just one bad decision. And Mike McCarthy afterwards was saying, if the play would have worked, everyone would have called them geniuses. I get it, but it was just at that point. I think the Cowboys had just gotten, their first stop on defense since the first quarter. So he brings up a good point. It is kind of one, it's a make or miss league, as they like to say in the NBA. So I understand some of it. We can't just be faulting the results over the process and that, but it's just one of these things. I mean, the Cowboys, I believe they've done kind of several fake punts throughout the year, and I don't think this one certainly didn't seem to catch the Washington football team by surprise at all. So whatever it was, the result certainly didn't work out, and that did seem to be the beginning of the end for this offense. So Dalton, mentioned he had an awesome bomb to Amari Cooper, just toasted Ron Darby running right by him for a 54-yard score. Other than that, we saw flashes. He had a really good throw to Cooper early on off his back foot under pressure. Also, CeeDee Lamb dropped a touchdown inside the 10-yard line. So that wasn't good, obviously, but like the pick 6 to Montez Sweat, just couldn't get the ball over the guy in a little screen. I believe it's to Ezekiel Elliott on the right. That wasn't good. 3 sacks wasn't good. It was just underwhelming. And again, once you take away Zach Martin from the equation, I get why it was underwhelming. This offensive line cannot really block anybody, but just the thing, with Dalton, we talked about this after the Vikings game. The reason why the Cowboys were so good last week was because they were facing PFF's single lowest rated defense in terms of consistent pressure rate. So when he's in a matchup like this against a defensive line this good, it's going to be problematic, not just for Dalton, but for everybody involved in this Cowboys offense. And that is doubly true if Zach Martin isn't able to get back into the picture. So, looking at their schedule moving forward, the Ravens next week, good luck. We got the Bengals, banged up 49ers team, and the Eagles going to week 16. So maybe in that week 14 matchup against the Bengals, we can feel good, but Cowboys offense, guys, we've seen them without Dak all season long. Shouldn't exactly be catching people by surprise at this point. Nothing is guaranteed in this post-Dak world, unfortunately. Ezekiel Elliott lost another fumble, 10 carries, 32 yards. Had a nice 15, 18-yard chunk, but got nullified by holding. Might have not happened if the holding didn't even occur. So funny how that works sometimes. But Zeke, just wasn't looking all that explosive. Again, it's not missing huge holes or anything. And Tony Pollard didn't exactly come in and do a ton better, although he had one of the better 2-yard runs you'll ever see, breaking a bunch of tackles on his way to converting. I believe it was a short little 3rd and 1. So Zeke's got the power, doesn't quite have that big play ability these days. Another middling performance. And the fact they only have 1 catch for 7 yards really hurts, because at least earlier in this year, we were seeing a really high pass down floor. Has not been the case recently. So Zeke, still hasn't found his way back in that RB1 conversation. I don't think this performance will do so. against the Ravens next week, it's going to be another tough, situation to put him more than in that top 15 range or so. And then, we're pretty much waiting for that Bengals matchup to hopefully get another good game out of Zeke. So truly just a disappointing performance from this entire Cowboys offense in the entire post-Dak era. Yeah, nobody else other than Amari Cooper had over 50 yards. He caught 6 of 8 targets for 112 yards and a score, latest and greatest Amari Cooper, Jerry World performance. But Michael Gallup, 41 yards, CeeDee Lamb, only 21 yards, mentioned the touchdown drop. Yeah, it just wasn't a good game from this Cowboys offense as a whole. Just couldn't really get consistently going. Looking at the Washington football team, another game from Alex Smith that I think this is what they were envisioning all along, because he kind of threw everyone off his scent a little bit in that Lions game a couple of weeks ago, where 355 yards, threw the ball over 50 times. I think he threw it 55 times. And, people were wondering, oh, what's this offense going to look like? They want to run the ball and play ball control. And they've been able to do that recently. I'm not saying they're going to be able to do that for the rest of the year, but Alex Smith, 26 pass attempts this week, was right around the same mark last week. 149 yards, touchdown, one interception that was not a good throw at all. He was under pressure and he just kind of got it out of his hands right to Jalen Smith. Luckily, Terry McLaurin was able to race him down and save a touchdown. And then the defense got that CeeDee Lamb drop and they held the Cowboys to just 3 points there. But yeah, other than that interception, Alex Smith had a good game in terms of taking care of the ball, didn't lose any fumbles. 3 sacks weren't great, but in his defense, weren't exactly plays where he was, just holding the ball too long or anything like that. He was able to consistently get the ball out to his running back. So look, Alex Smith, he's not someone that throws downfield, but he has opened up a little bit for Terry McLaurin. And because of that, we've seen the artist known as F1 continue to put up some useful performances. And this one caught 7 of 9 targets for 92 yards. I believe the second straight game against the Cowboys, he had exactly 92 yards. Just a situation where, McLaurin, he can win at all 3 levels of the field. And, also had that awesome chase down tackle, like I said, on the Jalen Smith interception. So great game from Terry McLaurin. He was someone that this week in particular was kind of everyone's top 5, top 6 of the wide receiver rankings. That was probably a little bit overzealous, but he's, going to continue to be the fantasy wide receiver 1 that he has been all season long moving forward. Nobody else had over 25 receiving yards. Antonio Gibson was number 2 in targets with 7. J.D. McKissic, just 2 targets in this one, everybody. And now you've heard Dwayne McFarland on this podcast. He comes and does the game by game breakdowns with me. You can catch him on the Wednesday edition of this pod if you want to try to get a head start on these Sunday games still. And his utilization report, he always does a great job talking about not just always what the touches said, but what the behind the scenes numbers say with the situation. I think this is going to be one where we look back next week a little bit closer at the snaps, and we're going to see that, okay, while McKissic didn't get the touches this week, he was still the guy out there in pass down situations, 3rd down, 2-minute, still ended up playing 41% of the snaps in the game. That Washington, even though they weren't blowing out the Cowboys, they were still either a neutral or positive game script throughout the entire afternoon. So hey, this was awesome. Antonio Gibson absolutely killed it. 3 touchdowns, gives him 11 for a season, 20 carries, 115 yards, and also had 5 catches, 21 yards, showing his ability in the receiving game. Gibson's a great player. We know this, but it's still not looking like as big of a role as we could possibly hope for. But hey, 27 combined carries and targets. We cannot complain too much. Everybody, Gibson's out there with his swaggy grill, making dudes miss, making all sorts of plays. You got to love it. I'm just saying, I would not expect this same role for Antonio Gibson if the scoreboard was reversed, basically. So we'll see what this Washington football team can do. The defense is really coming into its own. And, hey, in the NFC East, that truly is just wide open and has been wide open all year. It wouldn't be all that surprising if they were able to capture it. Just realize, they got to match up next week against the Steelers. Then they got to go into San Fran, home versus Seattle, and home versus Carolina. Wouldn't be shocked in particular if those Steelers and Seahawks games result in more McKissic-friendly game script. But, Gibson, at least with these, 15 plus carries he's getting almost every single week, regardless of the situation, we can continue to treat him almost as a borderline weekly RB1 now. Love that, Antonio Gibson has continued to make the most of his carries all year long. If you look at just the leaders this year in total force missed broken tackles, number 1, Dalvin Cook, number 2, Mike Davis, number 3, Josh Jacobs, and then tied for 4th, we have Antonio Gibson, Derrick Henry, and David Montgomery. So I know Montgomery is the most surprising name on the list. Put a little respect on his name. He breaks a lot of tackles before, inevitably kind of getting taken down 3 to 4 yards downfield. But that Bears offensive line does not make life easy on anyone, most notably the artist known as David Montgomery. Looking quickly at the rest of this Washington team, I think that actually I would talk about Logan Thomas real quick. Caught all 4 of his targets, 420 yards in a score. He's had 4 targets in every game this season. Also, do a 28-yard pass to Terry McLaurin for the completion. So Logan Thomas, former Virginia Tech quarterback. And last week he actually had a quarterback sneak where they motioned him across the formation, got under center and went in. Yeah, let's have your 6'6", 250-pound athlete take a snap or two away from Alex Smith per game. I like it. Logan Thomas made a good decision, a good throw. And he's a huge dude that can, carry a couple guys when he needs to after the catch or just with the ball in his hands as a rusher. So love the way they're using Logan Thomas. And we don't see this sort of usage out of tight ends around the league. Look, he's always going to kind of be in that upside tight end 2 range, but just realize a tiebreaker, give me the guy that actually has a chance for rush attempts and pass attempts at the tight end position. So great win for the football team, 41-26. Also kudos to the Texans getting that 41-25 win. Before we get on to some injuries to keep an eye on ahead of Sunday, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors at Monkey Knife Fight. People, everyone asks me, Ian, love PFF. How can I get some money off? Help me out, brother. And I tell them, go to Monkey Knife Fight, use promo code PFF, deposit at least $20, and you will receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's a $40 value for just $20, and you're not even necessarily losing the $20. You can use that $20 on Monkey Knife Fight to play DFS games, to play some prop games, and try to make that money back. So you're getting a free $40 PFF Edge subscription for just $20 on Monkey Knife Fight. Use code PFF, everybody. All right, now time to go through some injuries ahead of Sunday. I am recording this at noon on Friday. I was hanging out with the fam on Thanksgiving, so apologies for getting this out, later than usual, everybody. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. Just a couple notes as I'm just going through, Schefter's Twitter and stuff like that. As it's going, make sure I'm not missing anything too big. Eagles tackle Lane Johnson says season is done. Inside of his ankle has collapsed. That sounds very painful, and that is unfortunate for Lane Johnson. Looking around the rest of the league, we have John Brown ruled out with an ankle injury. He's been playing through the pain really throughout most this year. Look, Stephon Diggs is the overall alpha, but without having Smokey Brown there, we can look at Cole Beasley as, a legit wide receiver 3. So Gabriel Davis is going to step up and take away some snaps as well, but don't sleep on Cole Beasley. This guy has honestly been setting career highs and pretty much everything throughout this year. Just doesn't get the kind of consistent target share to make the most out of it. But he's had 2 games since week 7 with at least 11 catches and over 100 yards. So Chargers team that just is pretty much allergic to playing in a non-shootout. I believe them and their opponents have gone for over 50 points in something like 5 or 6 straight games. So Justin Herbert, and Josh Allen, they're both kind of in these same systems where, hey, they're putting up a ton of points on offense, and their defense, while talented, has been banged up and not really the same group of world beaters we've seen in the past. So, be ready to have plenty of exposure to this Bills and Chargers game in fantasy land if you can help it. I had that Ravens-Steelers game moved because of all the COVID outbreaks on the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, among others, are going to be out seemingly for Sunday. That means RG3 is going to be under center. Gus Edwards and Justice Hill in the backfield. So talked about this a little bit in my Thanksgiving DFS breakdown when I thought this game was going to be on there. But Gus Edwards, we have a big sample size of him in 2018 as a starter. We have week 17 last year and a couple games this year. He's averaged 16 carries, and I think it's 8 or 9 starts. So it's a solid sample size. We should be expecting him to, get in that 15 to 20 combined carries and targets if the game script goes okay. This is what worries me, particularly without Lamar under center now. I think it's almost a stay away for DFS purposes because he's going to be carrying this elevated ownership that probably we shouldn't even be caring that much about, because this Ravens offense already in such a brutal spot with Lamar Jackson. Now you take him away, I'm just worried about their chance to find in the end zone at all. So you only have to go back to the AFC divisional round to see the last time Justice Hill actually led this backfield in snaps. If they are going to be playing from behind like we'd be expecting them to play from behind with their backup quarterback under center, I don't think Justice Hill is going to get a bunch of touches, but I think he's going to steal enough snaps away from Gus Edwards to potentially render them both as non-viable fantasy assets. So Gus, he's going to be someone that without Lamar in the lineup, I'm going to take out of the top 20, have right more around that RB24, RB25 range. Bears quarterback Mitch Trubisky is expected to start ahead of Nick Foles, who remains sidelined with the hip injury. So with Trubisky, the great thing about Trubisky in Fantasyland, now I guess great is probably a little bit of an overstatement there, but the thing about Trubisky that can give him fantasy value, I should say, is his rushing ability. We saw in 2017 with John Fox and the first part of 2018 where he was actually averaging 25, 30 rushing yards per game and things went well. Here's the problem, people. Trubisky actually hurt his shoulder in the 2018 season as well. This was the double doink year when they went to playoffs, and he was actually providing some boom weeks. He hurt his shoulder in week 11. He came back in week 14. From week 14 all the way until week 14 the next season, Trubisky did not gain even 25 rushing yards in the game once. Before then, his rookie year up until week 11, he had passed that mark. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 10 plus times. He had at least 25 rushing yards from 2017 to week 11, 2018. We truly saw him not take off as often, with this injury, playing through the pain. So, hey, maybe in this new circumstance where he's pretty much playing for his job, his spot in the National Football League as a starting quarterback, yeah, it makes sense for him to play with, a little bit less, just reason of worrying about his shoulder. But you even go back to when he got hurt originally. I mean, he had a 45-yard run against the Falcons. Excuse me, when he got benched originally in week 3, he had that great 45-yard run. Like, Mitch is a freaking great athlete out there with the ball in his hands. I'm just worried, coming off the shoulder injury, how much rushing upside will we truly get? I think at the end of the day, probably just a good situation to stay away from, unless we're talking about David Montgomery, who has not cleared the protocol yet, I don't believe, but he's been practicing in full all week, expecting to play. He's, definition of a volume-based RB2. And Allen Robinson, who pretty much anyone can be under center, apparently, and this guy's still going to provide us with worst-case wide receiver 2 value. So, A-Rob, Montgomery, that's it, everybody. With the 49ers, Tevin Coleman with the knee injury and Deebo Samuel with the hamstring have been limited. Brandin Ayuk is on the COVID list right now, so we'll see. Maybe he gets activated before the game, but if he's unavailable, I think we can get Deebo kind of already into that wide receiver 3 range that he's been for the better part of the last 2 seasons. And this matchup against the Rams is not ideal, but as we saw when they played last time, Kyle Shanahan, when you are his number 1 playmaker out there, he can scheme you into success against just about anyone. So I'm not worried about Jalen Ramsey, because I'm not sure if he's going to be able to even influence this matchup all that much. I mean, their first meeting, Deebo had like 92 yards after the catch and only 66 receiving yards. So everything is these pop passes, these screen passes behind the line of scrimmage, plays that, a shadow cornerback like Ramsey can't really get in the way of anyway. So feel free to fire up Deebo as long as he is ready to go. Coleman is just going to be in there for more emergency purposes in any way, seemingly. Maybe not emergency, but he'll just be a backup because Raheem Mostert is expecting to be back. So he'll be the main guy. I'm fine going the well with Mostert as, a top 20 running back this week. Just realizing this matchup, Mullins under center, much lower floor for everybody involved in San Francisco than usual. Seahawks running back Chris Carson was limited on Thursday with a foot injury. Carroll said, after last game that Carson would for sure be back. So we'll see. We'd like to see a full practice before we can take, Pete as at his straight word. But Carlos Hyde should be at least somewhat involved either way. We didn't see Chris Carson running away with this 80% snap roll earlier in the year. But come on, Seahawks score so much. Russ has been cooking a little bit less lately. And I think, we can feel good enough about having Carson as a top 15 back in week 12. Just keep an eye on Rashad Penny because he's supposed to be coming back to practice soon. And quietly last year, we saw Penny and Carson pretty much split touches and reps alike when both were active. Rams tight end Tyler Higbee did not practice on Thursday due to an elbow injury. And we also have Irv Smith not practicing on Thursday due to a groin and back injury. So 2 similar situations where there's 2 tight ends in LA with Higbee and Gerald Everett, 2 tight ends in Minnesota with Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph. If either of them miss time, we're going to the bank with the other one as a legit top 10 option at the position. So that means Gerald Everett. If Higbee is out, we can fire up a confidence as tight end 1 and Kyle Rudolph if Irv Smith is out. Would also mention that Adam Thielen is someone to keep an eye on. He's still on the COVID list. Apparently has, had 1 positive test, 1 negative test. I don't freaking know what's going on either, people. But Justin Jefferson is someone that you should really try to get in the starting lineup every week regardless. I know sometimes people have, 5 freaking top 15 wide receivers and you find a reason to bench them. But look, if Thielen is out, it's not even a conversation. Justin Jefferson needs to be in the starting lineup of fantasy football leagues of all shapes and sizes. If Thielen is going to miss time, we can project Jefferson for a higher target share. With the Packers, Marquez Valdes-Scantling limited on Thursday after not being listed on Wednesday due to an Achilles injury. That means there was probably a midweek downgrade, which is obviously not good for him. Been a boom or bust wide receiver all year long. I would lean towards the latter option if he's going to be at less than 100%. Don't be afraid to really go back to well with Allen Lazard, who already played over a 50% snap rate last week, and we should expect them to put more on his plate moving forward. Devontae Adams is on the same practice plan as last week with his ankle injury, fully expecting to play, remains the overall wide receiver 1. Sam Darnold practiced in full on Thursday and is expecting to start on Sunday, play through the pain with his shoulder injury. So look, with this, the Jets offense has actually kind of been fun. The last couple of weeks, Flacco's put up over 27 points in back-to-back games. But you look at it, and he has a league-high average target depth this year. Joe Flacco has been gunning it downfield to Mims and Perryman. Because of that, Jameson Crowder hasn't done anything, but Sam Darnold is back, baby. If we've seen one thing that him and Adam Gase love over the years, it is literally the only thing that we can see that they love is throwing the ball to their slot receiver. That is Jameson Crowder. I mean, you look at these last 2 weeks. And 2 games ago, Crowder had a nice toe tap touchdown that kind of, made up for his lack of volume. But just compared to what he was getting with Darnold under center versus Flacco, and he even did have one big game with Flacco, but it's just been recent weeks. So to open up the year, Crowder had 13 targets, 10 targets, 10 targets, and then 13 targets again. Last 2 weeks, just 6 targets combined. So truly, getting Sam Darnold back for Jamison Crowder is going to make him, not a wide receiver 1, but it's going to actually put him on that wide receiver 2 borderline where he was not even close to a recommended start option otherwise. Bengals running back Giovanni Bernard limited on Thursday with a concussion. This is good because he got, thrown the concussion protocol and we just didn't really know what was going on. It seemed like a situation where Samaje Perine could be the guy to own Cincinnati. Situation where, okay, we don't want really anyone to do with this, anyone that's involved in this Bengals offense without Joey Burrow under center. But hey, if it's going to be a running back getting these 15 to 20 touches per week, I don't care what offense you're on, you're going to be fantasy relevant. But with Gio already limited, it does seem like he has a decent chance to suit up. If he doesn't, Samaje Perine is going to be, that volume-induced low-end RB2. Trayvon Williams would also be involved, but as my buddy Dwayne said on our Wednesday version of his podcast, Samaje Perine was actually taking the pass down work from Giovanni Bernard last week, which makes absolutely no sense. But it's not playing the fantasy players that we hope will get the touches. It's playing the fantasy players that we think will get the touches based on what their coaching staffs are doing. So it's unfortunate that now Giovanni Bernard is their early down grinder, I guess. But yeah, so he was the only guy I was willing to start, after, Burrow went down, because Finley is truly, in my opinion, the worst quarterback in the entire league, or at least the worst starting quarterback entering week 12. But yeah, Giovanni Bernard, he's not a recommended start either. Just stay the hell away from this Bengals offense, everybody. Tua was limited on Thursday with a thumb injury, but Coach Brian Flores said he should be able to play. Salvon Ahmed has not been practicing all week due to a shoulder injury. So look, Ahmed was someone we've been saying on this podcast, like, okay, if you can get him over the past 2 weeks where he's going to have this RB2 workload, that's fine. But Myles Gaskin's back this week, and it's not like Ahmed was doing enough to really run away with his job. So you add the injury into the equation, and Ahmed is someone that don't cut him just yet, but the second Myles Gaskin is activated from IR, and he has been practicing this week, so it sounds like that's a strong possibility for Saturday. Ahmed's going to become pretty dispensable pretty fast, especially now with this injury in mind. So Gaskin in this matchup ahead of the Jets. If Ahmed's going to be out, yeah, we can actually go ahead and fire up Gaskin. A little more riskier RB2 than normal, but that matchup and not having Ahmed in the picture is huge. So Tua, hey, he's going to get another chance to start this week, but, it's not even really about how well he plays in real life. It's just one of the least fantasy-friendly passing offenses in the league right now. Jakeem Grant's banged up too, so he's really only throwing Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki, who are talented, but the problem is Tua, he's not showing any sort of fantasy-friendly rushing floor. He's not throwing downfield, and he has fewer than 30 pass attempts in all of his starts this season. So just not someone I'm looking to play in fantasy because of the volume issues. Larry Fitzgerald tested positive for COVID and is out for week 12. Kyler Murray's been limited all week with an injury to his throwing shoulder. Not someone's going to keep him out. I mean, their GM, Steve Keim, said the expectation is that Kyler will play. Just realized didn't look great after the shoulder injury, throwing the ball last week against the Seahawks, and it could be something that could limit him this week and beyond as well. So without Larry, don't freak out about Andy Isabella. I think if anything, we have Hopkins. Obviously, he's locked in as a top 5 option at the position. Christian Kirk is someone that I think, even if he sees the shadow coverage from J.C. Jackson has all his interceptions, but look, he's still been out there the whole year, and this is the league's single worst defense. I'm talking about the Patriots, an explosive pass play rate allowed this season. So I think Kirk can get back on track after a couple of duds, even with Jackson following around. He's like I don't want to necessarily compare their play style, but to me, like, we need to treat Jackson almost like a pre-Baltimore Ravens version of Marcus Peters, like a less, boomer buzz version of that, because he's getting the interceptions, but he's also getting the big plays. I get it. You want to create turnovers. I think it's okay to give up a big play here and there if you're going to be, enough of a baller to take a couple of risks to make some big plays for your defense. Just realize that, Jackson, great cornerback, maybe not the cornerback that we need to be worrying about in fantasy land is my point there. Biggest issue here is, behind Kirk, I think Andy Isabella and Keyshawn Johnson are going to be getting in there and splitting snaps. So we saw this earlier in the year when Kirk was sidelined. I believe, where we all thought it was going to be Andy Isabella week, Keyshawn Johnson actually played more. So look, I love Isabella. The guy's a great player. He was my number 1 Cardinal on my, preseason. Hey, the most underutilized player on every team. He's still going to be a number 3 pass game option at best against the Patriots defense that, well, they haven't been great this year. Starting to play a little bit better. They have Gilmore active. And again, with a, less than 100% Kyler Murray back there, just not a situation I want to take too many chances on other than in DFS. Chargers running back Austin Ekeler is unlikely to play despite returning to practice with a hamstring injury. Sounds like week 13 is target. So another week of Kalen Ballage, everybody. I know he disappointed in the revenge game last week, and we were expecting, a much bigger performance. But if you still look at it, I mean, the volume was exactly what we were hoping for. 16 carries, 9 targets. I mean, oh my God, the second Ekeler gets back here, everyone, he's going to be a legit top 5 RB. The second we know he's healthy, just realize that, it does look like week 13 is going to be a target. So Ballage will be, an RB2 for another game. A lot of stuff going on with the Falcons. This will be one of the more important injury reports to monitor once the final numbers come in and stuff. But Hayden Hurst hasn't practiced all week with an ankle injury. Julio's been limited with the hammy, and Todd Gurley has been sidelined with a knee injury. So if Gurley's out, Brian Hill's someone that we can actually put inside the top 24 backs. We're going to have Ito Smith also getting involved, but hey, Brian Hill's someone that's really looked better than Gurley throughout this year. And if, again, you take away a team starting running back, there's going to be plenty of opportunity elsewhere. If Julio is out, just note that Matt Ryan has 1 touchdown. That's it in 4 games, with Julio completely out or sidelined for more than a half. So I think, Calvin Ridley, we're obviously firing up. Russell Gage is kind of this low ceiling wide receiver 4 regardless. I'm not really looking to take a chance on a Lamide, Zacchaeus, or Christian Blake, because Zacchaeus was the guy that was next man up throughout the first part of the year, but he was banged up last week. And because of that, Christian Blake ended up coming in after Julio got hurt. So I think it's a stay away because we don't quite know which guy it's going to be. And it's going to be a lesser version of the offense. So I know it's a great matchup against the, Raiders. If Julio is active, obviously he needs to be out there, but just realize there's a lot of kind of uncertainty behind Julio if he ends up being out. I'm not looking to attack, a backup tight end if Hurst is out, but he is someone that only Rob Gronkowski has more targets, at least 20 yards downfield, than Hurst this season. If he is able to be healthy enough to play this week, I do think Hurst could have himself a nice little game here and a potential shootout against the Raiders. About 6 more of these, everybody. Christian McCaffrey has been limited, but with a shoulder injury, but he's already been ruled out. Teddy Bridgewater, on the other hand, has been practicing in full and seems on the way back. So good news. PJ Walker was fine last week, but again, 2 brutal end zone picks. And I mean, this wasn't ever going to really be a QB competition. So bringing Teddy back into the picture, I think should be good news for the passing game. You can say, oh, maybe not good news for DJ Moore, but I mean, both DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are top 10 wide receivers in air yard share this season of their offense. I mean, it's been more consistent for Robbie, but we started to see them get a little more involved with DJ on the screens and stuff like that. So against a Vikings secondary that we just saw not even come close to being able to slow down Andy Dalton and company, I think pretty much all these Panthers wide receivers and Teddy can be fired up with some confidence. And that also goes for Mike Davis. RB1 workload. We saw the RB1 season get back to happening in week 11 against the Lions. A little bit tougher matchup this week, but again, chase that volume in fantasy football. Mike Davis has plenty of it. I mentioned before, David Montgomery has been practicing in full all week with the concussion coming out of the bye. So definition of a volume-based RB2 there. With the Broncos, Jerry Jeudy was downgraded to a DNP on Thursday, dealing with an ankle and Achilles injury. Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler will receive some boosts. Look, Drew Lock loves slinging that rock around. Just realize it's not an easy matchup, even though we're at home against the New Orleans Saints defense that is really coming on lately. And, if Judy's not there, maybe we'll take some, DFS starts to Patrick or Hamler, but I don't think it's an offense worth concerning yourself with too much in season long land. At the Colts, Phillip Rivers, not been practicing all week with a toe injury, but come on, this guy played through a torn ACL at one point. I don't think it's going to be anything to take him off the field. More interesting, though, is Zach Pascal, who's been missing practice with the knee and foot injuries. So Pascal actually leads the Colts in targets since the week 7 bye. This is why I've been rejecting the idea that Michael Pittman is, in the midst of this huge breakout, because he's had 90 of his yards, over the past 2 weeks come on literally uncovered crossers where he's just been able to run all across the field. And I just feel like it's one of these occasions where we're taking, every, threshold when I say, minimum 25 targets or, since week 4, all that stuff is always a little bit arbitrary, but we need to do the best job we can of not, just splicing weeks and splits that only tell one story. Like I see people only referencing Pittman over the last 2 or 3 games. Like what happened to the first 4 games he played the season where he played over 50% of snaps in every single one, even 92% back in week 2. And the guy never cleared 40 yards or, scored a touchdown. So I'm looking at since their week 7 bye, which Pittman came out and he's played 58%, 87%, 81, and 80% of their snaps. out there in starting lineups. Since then, the target distribution has been cut freaking right down the middle for pretty much all these guys, with Zach Pascal actually being the number one. So Pittman, yeah, he's looked good. And if we take Pascal out of the system, now we're starting to talk about a more condensed target share. But as this team stands when they're healthy, I just think it's an offense that wants to run the ball. And when they're passing it, we've seen evidence all year that they're going to continue to spread it around. So, hey, maybe the Titans won't guard Pittman like they really just refrained from doing in week 10, but just realize, so much of his production has kind of come against either blown coverages or just real soft zone coverage. No reason why that can't keep coming. And hey, it doesn't really matter how the production comes. We just want that production. However, it does get there in fantasy land. Just realize if Pascal is out, I would be more willing to treat, Pittman as more of a boomer bust wide receiver 3. As it stands, he is not a recommended start for me. He's outside my top 40 options at the position. DJ Chark has been banged up and not practicing all week with ribs. Chris Conley and Laviska Shenault have hip and hamstring injuries respectively, and they've been limited. Yeah, great situation for Mike Glennon to walk into. Give me James Robinson. Other than that, stay the hell away, everybody. 2 more. Sammy Watkins has been practicing in full all week with the hamstring. Should be good to go. Look, it's Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. They're the only guarantees. But Sammy, kind of, even though he's been always getting his, a certain level of flack that he hasn't exactly, helped himself out with all his inconsistency over the years. But you look at that playoff stretch last year, you look at week 1 and even a little bit what he was able to do afterwards. I think Sammy Watkins down the stretch here could be a sneaky upside wide receiver 3 more weeks than not. Last point, Jalen Richard, limited with a chest injury. Josh Jacobs popped up on the report with the hip on Thursday. Would think he's okay. He's kind of been on and off the injury report all year. He's such a tough guy. I think he'll play through the pain. But the Richard note is really interesting because last week, even though Jacobs only had a target, he was out there pass blocking, in the situations that Jalen Richard usually would have been the guy. So they trust Devontae Booker to take, a series or 2 here and there from Josh Jacobs. But Jacobs is the one getting the true 3-down roll when Richard is sidelined. So even if we didn't see that come to fruition last week, we got this juicy Falcons matchup where we could see Jacobs truly have, a game just in the upper range of his outcomes. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you, as always, for listening to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And when I say that's going to do it, I just want to do one more quick check on Schefter's always great Twitter account to make sure we aren't missing anything. And it looks like we are good for now. So please, make sure to check out these injuries again, at least before Sunday morning. Teams release their final actives and inactives 90 minutes before kickoff. So try to find some time before 1 p.m. just to make sure you don't have someone who is on this kind of questionable list end up not playing. So hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Have a great week 12. And again, we'll be back to your regularly scheduled Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday editions of this podcast in week 13 and beyond. So I'm Ian Hartitz. You can find me on Twitter at iHartitz. This has been the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.